everybody, and welcome to today's session with Rachel Hadley-Leonard, who's going to talk to us about understanding your stakeholders and how to get the most out of what they think. I'm very grateful to Campus 24, who have sponsored this session for us. We've got Geraldine here. Geraldine, would you like to say hello quickly?
Yeah, hi everybody, and welcome to today's session with Rachel.
Geraldine will be here at the end to give a quick run through of how Campus 24 works. For those of you who haven't dealt with Campus 24, it's an absolute game changer, and I can say that because I don't work for them, I'm not on commission. It enables you to really streamline your website. If you think about your website and how much you've got on there, there's just too much information for everybody, and this enables you to give your prospective parents the information that they want. So I really would recommend, if you can spare 10-15 minutes, to stay around and hear what Geraldine's got to say, or there will be an opportunity to book a one-to-one demo with her if you'd like to otherwise. But without further ado, I will hand over to Rachel Hadley-Leonard, who I'm sure a lot of you on this call have probably met or seen before, because she is a prolific networker when it comes to schools marketing and admissions. And on that note, I would like to hand over to you, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Alicia. I can't deny that, to be honest. You're right, I am a proficient networker, but I've also realised I've got the time wrong on my slide. It's not 1:30, it's 12:30, except I hope it's 12:30, but never mind. And welcome to everyone. Thanks for the introduction. And it's great to have so many people on the call, and hopefully you will be able to bear with us until the end. So we're going to be talking, as Alicia said, I'm just going to minimize that. If at any point you can't see my slides, Alicia, do give me a shout. We're going to be talking about stakeholders and why research is really important in understanding our stakeholders. So just a little bit about me before we start. I've been in this sector now for over 30 years, showing my age. And I've worked, my first career was actually as a teacher, head of department, senior leader in both maintained and independent schools. But I had a simultaneous career in marketing in industry. And many years ago now, I kind of merged those two together and left the chalk face, as it were, but stayed in the education sector. And for many years, I've been working with marketing and fundraising in schools with various roles that are written up there. I was a director for 7 years with AMCIS, and 2 of those as co-chair of AMCIS. I've been an independent school governor, and now I work as an independent schools development, admissions and marketing consultant, doing consultancy, training and mentoring. I'm also a mentor. I'm a judge for various awards, and I like to keep busy. So that's a little bit about me, and this is a little bit about some of the things we're going to be looking at today. So a very brief look at the current climate and whether your market has changed. What do your prospective and current families want? And I think it's important to remember that we've got 2 areas of stakeholder there that are really important. Often schools look at recruitment and perhaps neglect to look at retention. But for me, and you'll have heard me say this before, I'm sure, it's all about the 3 R's. It's about recruitment, it's about retention, and it's about reputation. And those 3 things are really important. And I talk about those a lot. They're probably synonymous with my name, Rachel. 4 R's if you put that in as well. How do you know what your families want? And that's a really important question for everyone. And then a little bit about how to listen to your stakeholders. Well, the whole session is about that, really. Why data-driven decisions are so important. What type of research you should be carrying out. Matching research methods to your school, because every school is different. And I, for one, do not believe that there's just a one-size-fits-all process here. It's very much about thinking what your school needs, where your school is at the moment, and matching the research methods to those needs. A little bit about running focus groups, but there's an awful lot of content here. Developing a culture of research, and that's really important to make research an integral part of what you're doing. and then the additional benefits of research. So it's a bit of a gallop today, I'll warn you. So bear with. Alicia, if you're still with us, I'm sure you are. Can you just tell us, Alicia, will people who've signed up for this get a copy of the slides?
They'll get a copy of the recording. The recording,
yeah, absolutely. That's what I meant. Yeah, thanks, Alicia. So you don't need to be furiously scribbling down, and don't worry if you feel I'm galloping through this. You will get a copy of the recording that you can digest and share with your team later on, unless you're a team of one, and that is the case in lots of schools. So I don't think I need to dwell too much on this slide, because we only have to open our BBC News apps and it's all over there. For those of you who subscribe to the ISC's daily bulletin, if you don't, by the way, it's free. The Independent Schools Council do a daily bulletin that gets you up to speed with all things independent education. It's brilliant. Sign up for that if you don't already. But you will only know through looking at that and the news, the challenges at the moment. So we've got the pandemic. And although we are perhaps through the pandemic, I don't think it's fair to say that we're not still recovering from the impact of the pandemic. And for some countries and for some international schools, particularly boarding schools, it's still very, very relevant indeed. We've got the cost of living crisis. It's why I was sitting 10 minutes ago next to my wood burner, because I was too mean to put the heating on. Heating costs too much. So you may see me shivering because I've now moved to better Wi-Fi. The teachers' pension scheme, again, we're not out of those woods yet. Most schools know now what they're doing, whether they're staying in, whether they're leaving, whether they've got a hybrid system, but it's still creating an impact. The political turmoil, don't get me started on that, but hopefully we are entering a calmer phase now of politics, and I think there seems to have been some calm restored. I hope I haven't spoken too early. So hopefully things will begin to settle down, but we've had a lot of political turmoil. And then, as I said, recruitment, retention and reputation are three ongoing challenges for schools. So we're not out of any woods yet, and more than ever, we need to be thinking about those 3 R's. Often schools will say to me, well, we don't need to market ourselves because we're full. And I would argue that's the very time that you need to be marketing your school. More importantly, it's the very time you need to be understanding your stakeholders. So how has your market and audience changed? I think it's worth just dwelling on that question for a moment. If you're sitting there and you think you know the answer to that question, I would put another question to you, which is, how do you know? You may think that your market and your audience has changed, but how do you know that? And we'll come to that shortly. So that question, we're kind of going to answer today, but I want you to take that question back to your senior leadership team, or if you are the senior leadership team, to share it with others on your team. And if you're the head, to share it with your SLT. And ask that question, how has our market and our audience changed? Bear that in mind. Next question for you, what do independent school parents want? Now, there are lots of pieces of research out there that have been done that looks into various marketing agencies, far, far bigger than me and my very small consultancy. And there is research that you can get hold of that will find out the answers to those questions. You may have done some research with your own parents to find out what your parents want. But my answers to that question are there in front of you. And that is from 30 years experience in the sector. But those things move up or down the list depending on where we are. I think most of these things are always important to independent school parents. In fact, that's probably not fair to say. They're always important to parents, full stop. It's just that some parents are more fortunate in that they can perhaps access a different type of education. Their child's happiness and well-being, safe and happy environment, small class sizes, excellent teaching, wraparound care, excellent facilities, broad extracurricular provision, excellent school reputation, and logistically sound. And don't underestimate that last one there, logistically sound. Parents need a school that is logistically possible. So very important. But as I say, all those attributes there that parents want from their school move up and down depending on where we are. So for example, wraparound care may or may not be as important post-pandemic, because people might be working from home. Now that might mean, or have a hybrid arrangement. Now that might mean that, particularly if your children are older, you don't need that wraparound care so much, because children can come home, let themselves in, you're in the house, and although you might be working in your office till 5:30, 6 o'clock, your older children are able to be safe, you're around, and they can look after themselves. Whereas for little children, the fact that you're working at home might not mean that you don't still need the wraparound care. So lots of questions there for you, but it's answers that we're looking at today rather than questions. And this is the last question. How do you know? How do you know what your school, not every independent school, not every school, what your school parents want? How do you know that? So, sorry, I said it was the last question. It's not. How do you know what's the right direction of travel for your school? Are you and your marketing and admissions team licking a finger and holding it to the wind? Or are they delivering a planned programme of research, stakeholder research, which allows the school to make strategic decisions based on hard facts, evidence and data? That would be a really important question for everybody on this call today. And another way of putting this is a similar slide really. Is it word on the street? Are you listening to what people are saying on the street? Very important and part of research. Are you holding a finger in the wind, or is it an ongoing programme of research? So, research and data-driven decision-making. What does that do? If you have done your research, which we'll come to shortly, that's the thrust of this webinar. If you've done your research, what does that evidence help you to do? Well, the hard evidence gains buy-in from SLT, from your governing body, and from your head. You know, I was working with a Midlands prep school recently, and they were thinking about a very new initiative for their school. They commissioned me to come in and do some research. I did some research with that prep school, which told them whether or not it was worth them going down that route. Okay, I'm not going to share the details with you because they're still confidential at the moment. However, it's really important because that research gave a definitive answer as to whether that school was wise in investing money into a new initiative. Without that research, they only had a finger to the wind. What else does the evidence do? It challenges or affirms beliefs and suspicions. So a little extension there of what we've been talking about. It's also very cost effective. To put in place marketing initiatives that simply don't work and don't respond to your audience's needs is not cost effective. Doing research, and some of this research you can do yourself. You don't have to go and pay someone like me to do it for you. Some of the research you can quite easily do yourself. I've just booked a call in January with a school that I've done lots of research with, literally booked it in this morning. But in January, we have got a call to decide going forward how much of that they can do themselves. Now it's been done once for them. And there are lots of ways to do that. So it can be very cost effective, and it stops you investing in things that don't work. A little word on data. You already have really, really, really valuable data, gold dust data. You have your admissions data, and that is a key driver, or it should be, of future marketing activity. Now, hopefully everybody on this call is using their admissions data and working collaboratively with their marketing team to drive marketing strategy using that data. That is an ideal world. If there's anybody sort of shaking their head or thinking, what admissions team, what marketing, it's just me. In a way, it's easier if it's just you, because you've just got to talk to yourself about the admissions data and how that impacts your marketing strategy. But hopefully everybody is doing that already. And if we look down at the bottom here, I'll give you some examples of that data. So your conversion ratios, for example, your inquiry visit, open events, taster sessions, registration, second visit, assessment, offers, acceptance, and join. and all the conversion ratios in between. It's very useful to have your inquiry to join ratio, but it's more useful to have conversion ratios between every single one of those stages of the admissions process. And I know Campus 24 will be nodding in agreement with me here. You've got 5-year trends, or you should have. And don't panic if you haven't. I work in so many schools where they say to me, Rachel, we haven't got that data. We've only just started collecting it this year. That's fine, you've got what you've got. But going forward, even if you're in that position, you will have 5-year comparative data that you'll be able to work out 5-year trends from very soon. Those trends are going to be bucked by the pandemic. So it is a little bit more difficult at the moment than it would normally be. But I think it's fair to say that those trends are really, really important. And pipeline drop-offs, you've got those as well. When you look at your pipeline process for admissions, you can see where there are drop-offs. So that data is already crucial. And you should be able to work out the second thing here, the return on investment, the ROI of your marketing and admissions effort using that data. Okay, how much did we spend on X marketing campaign? When did it take place? What were the immediate effects or the longer term effects of that marketing campaign? And therefore, what is the return on investment? And the other good thing about admissions data is it's a catalyst for really strategic decisions made by governing body heads SLT. So you've already got lots of data. You've hopefully already got this data here as well. I'm going to take a sip of water, so I'm just going to let you read through that slide, but you should have most of this data. If you haven't got all that data, when you get the recording, or just take a screenshot now or take a photograph of this slide, that's the data that really every good school should have at their fingertips. And if you haven't, as I say, don't panic, but this is what you should be working towards. And then we come to the thrust of today's webinar, research. In other words, stakeholder and market research analysis. For example, parent and pupil surveys, community research, focus groups, telephone research, etc. And that's what we're going to look at now. So what does your school do already? So it might be worth you just thinking to yourself, jotting down, taking to your SLT, what does our school do in terms of stakeholder research already? And hopefully you will do 1 to 7 of these 7 types of research. There are others as well. These are the 7 main ones. So the annual parent survey, I think pretty much every school does that now, or maybe you do it every 2 years. Non-joiner telephone research. Do you ring people who didn't join your school to find out why? Most schools, when I ask them that question, say, yes, we do that. But what they mean is the registrar or the admissions, head of admissions, or the admissions person, or the head PA, if that's the admissions person, when the person telephones them to say, we're not going to be joining your school, they say, please, can I ask why? That's not really what I mean by non-joiner telephone research. I mean an in-depth 20 to 30-minute telephone conversation, usually done by a third party. Doesn't have to be, but usually they'll be much more candid, that really drills down into the reasons for not joining your school, but more importantly, what attracted them to another school. If all you have time to do and budget to do is to ask why they didn't join your school, of course you should be asking that, but I mean something much deeper than that. New starter interviews, surveys. Many schools don't do this and they're missing a trick. Surveys with the pupils. Pupils love answering surveys, they really, really do, particularly if you give them an incentive, even if that's cookies or whatever. Some schools give vouchers as incentives, but you know, that's another topic. And you can do that with the new starter parents as well. Early leaver telephone research, very similar to non-joiner. Why did people leave? Again, I don't mean the head or the registrar saying, and why are you leaving us? And just noting down somewhere financial. I mean a 20 to 30 minute in-depth telephone conversation about why those people are leaving your school. Alumni surveys, really good way to engage your community. There is so much, I could talk for a whole webinar, and I often do, about alumni engagement, but it's really, really important to be engaging your alumni. A separate session though. Parent and pupil focus groups, a little bit about that later on in these slides, but focus groups, heads in particular tend to be wary of focus groups because they think people are going to be very vocal in a very negative way. I would argue that, and I've run hundreds, literally hundreds of focus groups in my time, that when you get people in a room, parents in a room, particularly parents in a room, and you've curated a very well-balanced group of parents, from your extreme shouty parents to your very quiet reticent parents, and it's always good to have that mix, you will find the very loud shouty parents do temper down a little bit, or quite a lot actually. Again, it's a whole new session, is focus groups, but we will touch on it shortly. And staff surveys, staff exit surveys, do you do those? Focus groups, they are all forms of engagement. Now, an added benefit of all of this engagement is, in addition to you finding out exactly what you want to drive your strategy forward, your marketing and admission strategy, it's also a brilliant engagement strategy. When I was doing some quite substantial research with a school in Hertfordshire recently, earlier this year, end of last year, beginning of this year, the one thing that we were told overwhelmingly by the community, in particular the parent body, was how nice it was to be asked. In terms of engagement, stakeholder engagement, that was the best thing that school could have done, because it didn't matter what the parents were saying. Well, it did, obviously, and that was part of the analysis, but it was about the engagement. Parents wanted to be heard, and we'll come to that. So what type of research is right for my school? Well, let's just give you some examples here. So this is all about matching the research to your school situation. Now, in an ideal world, you would do all of those 7 pieces of research on a rolling 2-year program, possibly a 3-year program, where at the end of every 2 years, you'd engaged all of those types of research. And as I say, that does not have to be costly. Some of these, not all, some of them you can do yourselves. Let's just look at some examples. Let's say that you've got a low inquiry to join ratio. So we talked about that earlier. You've got hundreds of inquiries, but your joining figures are really, really low, and they're sinking, they're diving. That ratio is getting lower and lower. What sort of research would you do? Very obviously, the non-joiner telephone research. As I say, not a question when they ring up or email to tell you they're not joining the school. I do not mean that. I mean a 30-minute in-depth conversation. A question that people often ask me when I say that is, well, they're not going to give you that information. Surely they're not going to have a 30-minute conversation. Believe me, they do. If it's done properly, in a proper program of research, where you notify people in advance, obviously you abide by GDPR restrictions and so on, or regulations, I should say. And people know that they are going to be engaged. They will give their time. You can get response rates of up to about 60, 70%, or 65% of people prepared to give half an hour for those conversations. It's extraordinary. Another example, you've got a new strategic direction for your school. So let's say your school's going to go co-ed, having been single sex. Your school is a boarding school, it's going to become a day school, or vice versa, to day school thinking about boarding. Your school is a prep school that's thinking about starting a nursery. That would be the perfect opportunity to do a current parent survey, or perhaps a prospective parent survey if you were adding on a nursery, for example. Surveys are something that you can do yourself, but I would always say it's better to do it with a third party. And I would say that obviously, but it genuinely is. People will be much more candid if they think the results are completely anonymous. However, if you just don't have the budget for that and you want to run your own, I would say at least invest in a day with a consultant to help you do it in the right way, get the right questions, etc. Most schools will be able to afford that. So I would say somewhere between those two continuums. Let's give another example, engaging the wider community. So alumni and community survey focus groups. So you just want to engage a different portion of your sector of your stakeholder group. So you would do alumni or community surveys or focus groups. One of the things that we found during the pandemic, and I ran lots of focus groups for schools during the pandemic, and of course they were all online. The people willing to take part was higher, the turn-up rate was higher, and the feedback was as good, if not better, than in person. So don't discount online focus groups, because they just make things so much more accessible for people. You can have parents, you can do them at 7 o'clock in the evening after work and after they've got the kids off to bed or settled down for the evening, and it's really good engagement. Let's say the other final example there, and there will be hundreds of examples, but the final one here is you've got a new head or chair of governors. With that, I would propose that you try and do the whole suite of research, that you come in with a clean slate, and I've done this for a couple of schools now where I've done the whole suite of research. It's a lengthy process. It takes around 6 months to do, but it's a brilliant process, and the feedback is worth its weight in gold. It really is. In terms of return on investment, it's huge. We're just going to drill down. I'm just going to keep an eye on the time. We're going to drill down into one more aspect of one more example. So let's take the non-joiner research. So what is the aim? The aim is to canvass opinion on parent and pupil reasons for declining an offer. And the rationale is to gain insight into parent and pupil perceptions surrounding the school and its competitors. That is really important to inform future strategic decision making and marketing messages. So that's your aim and your rationale for doing it. What's the method? It's telephone research. It's not a question on an email or a question just as they leave. What's the content? The content is brief, but very, very insightful questions that drill down and explore reasons for choosing another school and declining the school offer. As I say, people will give 20 to 30. I think our typical telephone conversations are about 24 minutes long. So that is how long people are prepared to give. When you get the people on the phone in the first place, anything between 40 and 70% response rates, they will give you their time because they're expecting the call. So typical questions might be impressions of the school and open events, strengths of the school, any perceived weaknesses, parent and child perceptions, which school was ultimately chosen, obvious choice, and 99 times out of 100, they will share that with you. Key factors and priorities in making the decision, key strengths of the competitor school, so important. And then, for example, describing the school in 3 words. So they'd be typical questions that you would ask in non-joiner research. As I said, if you're doing this with a third party, you can give the promise of anonymity and you are much more likely to get candid answers. So if you are budget constrained and you are doing it yourself, I would say at least do it with someone who is as far removed from the senior leadership team as you possibly can, and perhaps you can guarantee anonymity too onwards from that point. So what are the outcomes? Well, it's a much better understanding of parental perception. We think we know what parents want, but do we? It's improved admissions processes. At some point, things will come up in that research when you're engaging that community and that group of stakeholders, which will say, we didn't like this, or we thought this could have been better. And that will inevitably improve the process. You have got a far better analysis of your competition. Again, we often think we know, but we don't necessarily. We can target areas for academic and support staff, and that's really interesting because, as every single one of you will know on this call, marketing is not just about the marketing and admission staff in the school. It is about the academic staff, the teachers as well. And there will be areas for them to support. So often feedback highlights brilliant things that teachers have done, to engage children, even if they chose to go somewhere else in the end of the day, but it will also highlight things that really could have been improved. It'll be a catalyst for strategic change, and it will undoubtedly be a return on investment, because the cost of doing the research will be offset completely by all the positives. And of course, if you're doing it yourself, zero cost. So let me just see, have we got time for this second piece? Yes, we have. Early leaver research. We'll just run through this as another example. The aim is to canvass opinion on reasons for not continuing, for example, to Key Stage 1 or Key Stage 2 or Key Stage 3 or 4, actually. The rationale to increase retention rates. So to gain insight into perceptions surrounding the school and its competitors, the same. Telephone research, and again, brief but insightful questions exploring the reasons for leaving earlier than expected. So these are people who've already been at your school, but they're leaving earlier than the natural end point for your school. And you may sit there again and think, well, we know the reasons for that because we asked them and they say it's financial. But there is so much more that you can get out of these conversations. I'm going to take another sip of water, so I'll just let you read these questions. These are typical questions that we might ask early leaver parents. So all of those questions are designed to get invaluable information that you would not get otherwise, and their value is huge. What are the outcomes? Understanding of parental perception, improved transition process, and this is where the retention can really go up a notch. You will find out far more than you thought you knew, and you will be able to improve that transition process from year 6 to year 7, from year 2 to year 3, from year 11 into year 12. Better competitor analysis, and again, return on investment. I mentioned running focus groups, and this is something that you can do yourself as a school, you can do internally, but again, I would have the facilitator as someone who is far removed from the school as possible. And if you can, maybe have a chat to external people who run focus groups as a matter of course. You want a key topic, and I would advise that you never address more than 2 topics in one session. Now, the engagement, the purpose of a focus group is all about stakeholder engagement. And this will be very, very evident in the feedback that you get after the focus groups. People are incredibly delighted to be engaged in this way. And it's really, really important. I think every school should operate a program of focus groups. But the facilitator ideally will be external. I know some schools who share external facilitators, so they're not, it's a low cost budget thing to do, so they're not necessarily running their own focus groups, but they're doing it for a neighbour school, or probably not a neighbour school, a school, you know, that's in a different county and not a direct competitor. The curation of the group is really, really important, because the curation of the group has to be a mix of people. You would always throw it open to everyone. I think schools worry about doing that, but you never ever get, well, you do get more than you need, but you just offer them an online focus group, or you offer them the chance to contribute by email if you're absolutely inundated, but that very rarely happens. Absolutely a maximum group size of 8. Recording and note-taking is vital, and you can't do that yourself if you're the facilitator. You have to have someone else doing that for you. And also, way in advance of the focus group, you need to be telling people that you will be recording and note-taking, not attributing anything they've said personally, which again is why it's better to have someone less removed from SLT, and you won't be attributing names to comments. And more often than not, when I run focus groups for schools, I obviously do not ask the names of the people there. And the timing of the session, again, this could be a whole webinar in itself on focus groups, so this is a real whistle-stop tour, but the timing, just make sure that you're reaching parents who work and parents who don't. So usually I would offer 3 sessions. I would offer a session just after drop-off, a session just before pickup, and a session in the evening online when working parents can get to you as well. Lots to discuss in that respect. But in terms of stakeholder engagement, it's probably one of the best things that you can do is to run focus groups. The feedback and the affinity for the school and the positivity that focus groups bring about is huge. So how do we establish a culture of research? Well, there are three things I think that stop people from engaging their stakeholders in this way. One is fear, and that normally comes from the head, fear of hearing things we don't want to hear. Time, just finding time to do it in our busy marketing, calendars, and budget. So budget I've addressed a few times throughout this webinar. There are many things you can do yourselves. You don't have to go and get an external agency and pay them tens of thousands of pounds to do lots and lots of research. There are lots of points on that continuum around that where you can just get a day's advice, you can get people to just come in and help you set things up, or you can get external people to come in and do some types of research but do the other type yourself. Time is always going to be a problem, and that's a resource for you to manage within school. And that, I guess, is offset against budget. But fear is the one I'm particularly interested in, because I have yet to run research with schools where the head, I'm pausing as I say this because I'm trying to think of an example to prove myself wrong, but I can't, where the head will hear things they don't want to hear, but where hearing that hasn't been positive in the end. And I think we would all say that about our own lives, really. If something's wrong, you want people to feed that back and to tell you so you can change it for the better. So I think that fear is very much misplaced. I think the main thing is whether you want to be a hearing school or a listening school. And I'm just going to let you read through those notes yourself on the difference between a hearing school and a listening school, because what you're trying to achieve is to be a listening school. So one of the most important things is that a listening school acts on the findings. And I really don't like it when I see schools doing research, but then they just don't feed back to parents or act on any of the findings. But basically, all those things on the right there, growth mindset, really big buzzword at the moment, but that's what you're trying to achieve. You're trying to achieve an ongoing program of research that so your community, all your stakeholders, feel that you're a listening school. Now, I've talked a lot about parents, but this webinar is about engaging stakeholders and doing research with them. And I think it's really important that everybody, doesn't forget all the other stakeholders, your alumni, your former staff, your pupils, your former parents. They are all so valuable in terms of stakeholder engagement. I'd forgotten I've got that slide. That's the slide I'm talking about. So this is where everybody comes in, and even down to suppliers. It's funny, when I go to visit schools, often I have to get a taxi from the train station to the school, and I will always ask the taxi driver what they think of that school, just some anecdotal research on the spot. Stakeholder engagement. They are stakeholders in your school because they are taking people and dropping them off to your school all the time. So I think you need to think out of the box for this one and think about everyone who is a stakeholder. So we're almost at the end because I want to leave 5 minutes for questions. So those are the types of research that you should be doing to engage your stakeholders. And it's just building that into your strategy, really, building that into your 2 or 3 year marketing and admissions strategy, so that it's not a surprise to your stakeholders that you're engaging with them, but it's a natural expectation. Some schools have got a really, really good reputation for doing this. And finally, the additional benefit of research is growing parent advocacy. Like I said, I don't think I've ever done research with schools or heard of schools who've done research where the parent advocacy, the parent stakeholder group, hasn't grown, and people are spreading the word. And as we all know, word of mouth marketing is probably the best marketing that you can have. And that's all really. So I'm going to hand over to Alicia. There might be, I don't know if there's some questions in the chat. There's one.
No. Well, thank you, Rachel. That was really, really insightful. And I think it's interesting to hear, isn't it? Because I think quite often when you're working in a school and you're so busy, stakeholder research is something that's always on your to-do list, but quite often doesn't make it to the top. So I think it's good to just be reminded how it can have such a positive impact on the wider marketing and admissions and pupil recruitment. And one thing that I thought I would just mention, because I was speaking to a head recently and they'd conducted a parental survey. And I wonder what your views were on this, because my view is with the parental survey is keep it tight, keep it very much focused on things that you want to know about and things that you can action. So don't ask about the uniform if you know you can't change it for 3 years. However, he said that they always put on their survey, is there anything else you'd like to say? Now, in my world, I thought, oh gosh, this opens up a complete can of worms of people putting their 2 pence in about lunch or whatever. However, he said that he'd found it a really useful way to stop things escalating, because he then followed up with those minor gripes, and he said he thinks that stopped them coming into being formal meetings. He could say, oh, you mentioned this, and he was able to sort of informally address bubbling issues. And I just wondered if that was something that you'd experienced as well, because I think, you know, if you're a marketeer and you're trying to sell to your head, why do you want to do the research? The fact that it can save them time and save them people wanting to meet with them formally, I think is a real plus point. But I don't know, what's your experience of that, Rachel?
Well, absolutely, Alicia, and I would agree with both points that you made there. I think uniform, parents' evenings and school lunches are the 3 things that I would always advise schools to leave off that particular. They will come up anyway, even if you don't ask about them, they will come up. Parents find a way to mention those 3 things because they're the 3 gripes. But I think the head that you were speaking with, you know, was bang on correct, because if you build that in, and that's something that we do with the focus groups as well, and I didn't say this, but quite often at the bottom of research, the parent survey, we will say, you know, if there are other things that you want to raise, do let us know, because we will be running a series of focus groups to address many of these issues. And that's a similar thing, really, because it's just preempting parents' gruntles, if you like, and making sure that you can say, we're a listening school, we're open ears, and we're able to address those questions that you've got. So I think it's really, really important. And I think he's absolutely correct. As I say, we always use it as parent survey as an opportunity to add on to the end, would you like to take part in focus groups about a variety of options as well? But I think it's a great idea to have an open-ended question. The feedback that I always encourage heads to give is really important, though, and I think you have to set out from the beginning, when you start doing research, that you are not going to be able to fix everything. And I think that's really important for all stakeholder groups to understand, so that then when you feed back to them, you can say, these are the things that were the most common, these are the things we're going to be addressing. But then you can do focus groups on some of the other grumbles, and like you say, or bring up in a meeting. So yeah, I wholeheartedly uphold that.
Great, thank you, Rachel. If anybody else has got any questions, please either put it in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask. Otherwise, I think it's just to say thank you. I think that was really, really helpful to everybody on the call. And as I say, it's something that I think we always have at the top of our list, but don't necessarily get round to. I'm now going to hand over to Geraldine from Campus 24. If you haven't seen what Campus 24 can do for you, please do stay on the line. It is definitely worth 10 minutes of your time. And in the same way that we've been talking about the fact we need to listen to parents and prospective parents, it's very hard to know which little segment of your school they're interested in. And this is where Campus 24 can help you and really personalize that for you. So I will now hand over to Geraldine. And the only other thing to say, and this is a shameless plug from me, We've just confirmed the date of our 3rd annual full-day marketing admissions conference, which will be online and also at the Mount School in York. And that's Friday, the 17th of March. So you will get details about that. But if you can put your date in the diary, that would be superb. But without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Geraldine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alicia, and thank you, Rachel. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. So if you do have another 10 minutes just to stay on this call, please do. And I'll tell you a little bit about Campus 24. I'll give you an idea of how it can potentially support you. And look at the 3 R's which Rachel mentioned: recruitment, retention, and reputation. So my name's Geraldine Bell. I'm the Schools Partnership Manager with Campus 24. I'm not sure whether many of you are familiar with our platform, but basically it's a cloud-based admissions and recruitment platform for schools that will allow you to personalize your content for each entry point to your school. So today we'll look at how it supports student admissions, but it can also support areas of staff recruitment, alumni, and fundraising. And as I say, you can quickly and easily create new content that you can share with prospective families and parents. Campus 24, just very briefly, is part of the William Clarence Education Group, which some of you already may be familiar with. They provide consultancy services to parents who are looking for the best schools to send their children to. And then we also have our publishing division, which is School Management Plus, that produces titles such as the Independent Schools Magazine and the International Schools Magazine. And it's our work through with school leaders around the world that we know that prospective families are looking for a more personalised experience when shortlisting schools for their children. So you've currently got your school website, which is probably the first port of call for most parents. It caters for the masses. It hosts everything you ever need to know about the school, including all the entry points. So it can be very difficult for parents to perhaps locate the information instantly to what they're actually looking for. And it can be quite difficult for you as a school to make any changes quickly and easily unless you've got a team of developers on hand. Some of you may still be printing your prospectus, some of you may have digitalized your prospectus, but again, it's static and probably contains all the information about the school, not necessarily the content that parents are wanting to receive. So what Campus 24, it will give you personalization that can be tracked. So it will give you detailed analytics and centralizes that information that you've got on your website and ensuring parents get the information that they actually want to receive. So it's cloud-based. Parents will access Campus 24 via a unique URL link. And this is how our platform looks on a desktop, tablet, and mobile device. So it can be accessed anytime, anywhere. And I'm now going to take you into a Campus 24 experience. So this is a broad overview of a certain entry point within a school. And this particular one is the senior school experience for Haileybury School. Up here, we have the unique URL link, which you can share with parents. So you can share this across your social media. You can have it on your Facebook page, your Instagram page, or you may just send the link out in an email in response to an inquiry from a parent, and then they can instantly access this information. So down the left-hand side, we have a menu. This can be customized. It can be anything you want it to be. And it tells a digital story of what life is like at your school for this particular entry point, which is the senior school. We brand the school up using your school branding and colors. And in the broader experience itself, this is where we host the content. So a lot of your content might be spread across multiple pages on your website. It'll be very static in a printed prospectus or indeed a digital prospectus, but you can bring your content to life and you can be really quite creative with it. We use a drag and drop interface, so it's really easy to add new content into this. And we host hotspots, and behind the hotspots, you can host any type of content. So it might be a video, it might be a PDF, it might be a call to action to apply now. Now, if a parent clicks on any of these hotspots, you will get the detailed analytics behind the website and content. So you'll know what content they've actually engaged with. A parent can watch a video and you'll know that they've actually watched it. You can also host calls to action to apply now, which can them straight into the application form to apply now. So if you're using like things like Open Apply, you can have your Open Apply link in there. And then you can also host PDF documents like school fees, which parents obviously want to know how much the fees are. So this is a PDF document that a parent can download. So as we move through our scenes down the left-hand side here, as I say, we're telling a digital story of what life is like at your school. There's also an auditorium. So if we imagine you've got two parents, you're hosting an open day, both parents might not be able to attend, maybe one can attend. So what you can do here is host the event live, or you can put a recorded session in here for them to view later on. So again, if you're attracting international families and parents, because of the pandemic, they may not be able to travel, or they may not want to travel, but they may be really interested in watching one of your events. So that's a really broad overview of a senior school experience. It could quite easily be the junior school. It could also be the prep school as an example. So if we go back to our presentation here, and I'm going to ask you to think about something else here. So just go back into presentation mode. So what you can do with Campus is also go down the personalization route. So you can digitalize each entry point, and that may replace your prospectus. But what you can also start to do is personalize and create personal experiences for prospective families and students. So if we imagine your admissions teams take an inquiry, Emily is 15 years old, Emily and her parents are interested in a sixth form place. Emily wants to study the IB pathway. She's got a keen interest in hockey. She also loves music and enjoys chemistry and wants to find a school that's really going to help and support her university application. What would you normally do with Emily at this stage? You may send her a link to download your digital prospectus, which again is going to give her all the content for all the school, including details of the prep school. You might ask her to attend one of your open days or events. You may ask her to travel 2,500 miles to attend one of those events. But what I'm going to do here is actually show you what you could be sending Emily. So this, when it loads, is a super personalized experience for Emily that's going to focus on her areas of interest. So if you remember, Emily was interested in hockey, science, music, and next steps at university. So this is Emily's personalized experience. This is the link at the top. So when your admissions teams take that call, you can instantly send in a matter of minutes this link, so Emily can open this up and it will take her into the content that she wants to view and wants to receive. Emily can also share this experience with her parents and grandparents, and again, they've got instant access to view at any time. We've branded the site up again, we've got the school logo and colours, and again, we're telling Emily, or giving Emily, a digital story of what life is like at senior school, but then we drill down into Emily's areas of interest. So we've got video content from the hockey team there. We've got details of fixtures for sporting events for this academic year. So Emily can access this content as many times as she wants. She's got a keen interest in science, so we've brought in some content here. Again, video content, PDFs, calls to action to apply now, and then details of her next steps at university. And then she can also view one of the live events or the recorded sessions. So that is going one step further with Campus 24 and going down that personalization route. And as I say, giving parents and cutting out all the noise that potentially you're sharing on your website. So if any of you actually want to see what a Campus 24 experience would look like for you, your school, then do get in contact with me and we can jump on a 15-20 minute call. It will support you at every stage of the admissions journey. And as I say, the other areas we support are HR, recruitment. We've got detailed analytics, so you can clearly see what parents are engaging with, and Campus 24 is live 24/7. So again, if you're attracting international students or you're supporting international agents, you could be in control of the content that you share. So here's just some of our schools. I can see Alicia's come back on the call, and I'm just having a look at the time because I'm conscious I just had 10 minutes. But honestly, if any of you want me to create experiences for your school, I'd probably only need 15 minutes of your time. I should also point out that we're also about to release Campus 24 automation. So if you embed Campus within your website, it's going to save your admissions team so much time, because it's going to put the power of content in the parents' hands, so they can quickly go into your website and select the content that they want to receive quickly and easily once we've built it at the back end of Campus for you. That's it for me, Alicia. I think I'm within the 10 minutes there for you, aren't I?
You are. Thank you, Geraldine. And we will send details out to everybody if you do want to get in touch with Geraldine. I think, you know, we're now looking at millennial parents, and millennial parents want that personalised experience, and they expect that personalised experience. So I do think Campus 24 is a product for the parents that are coming through. I don't know how many of you have got youngsters in your office, but certainly the ones I've worked with, they're scared of the telephone. They don't like phoning people. So gone are the days of these people. They're our parents phoning up and asking this information. They want to be able to find it themselves. And this is where Campus 24 can make you able to do that. So thank you, Geraldine, for that. I hope everybody enjoyed the session. We will edit it and then we'll send it out so you can watch it, share with your team, share with SLT. And I hope that you'll join us at the next one, which is in January, how to get the most out of social media marketing. So unless there's any questions, it just remains for me to say thank you all for joining us today. Thank you.